and we are on that government debt issue. Looks like it's the only thing that we're going to talk about this morning. So, Gabriel, let's talk about it. Just before I went on break, Gabriel, I mean, they're saying, well, we're going to introduce a sinking fund. Like, that is what has been seen as the magic bullet so far as we approach 2021, 2022, about any conversation about how we can manage our local debt and not get into the area where we're defaulting. But then again, Gabriel, someone's going to ask you, where's this money going to come from, though?
Yeah, so that's a fair question, and that question really, if you ask them, I assure you they won't have an answer for you. So the idea of a sinking fund, let me tell you where the idea of a sinking fund comes from. It comes from a company that maybe has issued a public bond, and they want to repay it faster than they can. So in years they have extra profit, they set aside some money to go and pay that bond faster. Now, in this country, if I can ask you, where is the extra money coming from? These are people who are unable to set up a sinking fund for their pension liabilities. We cannot account, we do not have money to pay for our pension liabilities that have accumulated to over 300 billion. So if you look at the civil service, we cannot even every year or every month, because if you're working in a private company, what happens is every month they pay money to a pension fund manager for your pension liabilities. The government does not do that. The government waits until you retire, they scramble around, they find money, they pay you peanuts because they never invested the money to earn the necessary returns. So if they cannot set up a sinking fund for pension, which is required by regulation, why are they lying to us they can do that for this debt? Answer is they cannot. And it's as simple as this simple. They need to cut expenditure and cut it heavily. We need to stop doing unnecessary development projects. We need to go for more efficiencies instead of doing expressways. You generate more efficiencies along the Mombasa Road. But if they still want to do grand things and look good, because they're going to be gone for after 2 years, or then there's no responsibility, in short, from these guys. They're not looking at project in terms of return and IRR. You just do projects for the sake of projects and saying, we have this, but they're not looking at the return that project brings back to the economy. And that's where we are failing. So it's as simple as that. We're spending on things that do not benefit us. The civil servants have been there for so long, they've learned all the loopholes, they're bleeding the government. So unless they really sit down and instead of talking, actually look at their expenditures critically, because where we are, the president should not be hosting any grand events.
Yes.
He should not. That's how you know they are serious. They should not be renovating their offices. They should not be maintaining 5 state houses. That's how you know someone who's serious about cutting expenses. It's as simple as that. It has to start from them. As long as you're still doing, tea parties worth millions every now and then when you feel like you're hosting leaders left, right, and center to discuss non-issues, then the message is simple. Zero responsibility, zero understanding. Actually, I claim that they have understanding of what they need to do. They just lack the will to do it. Simple as that. So forget the sinking fund. It's just stories from the IMF. IMF is going to say that tax Mr. Simba and Mr. Gabriel as much as possible. That is their solution. And ours is to avoid those taxes as much as possible.
Pretty much. All right, let me cross over to you, Chacha. And right now, let's just look at what has been our interest, our annual average interest payments, because that's also another point that we need to talk about if the government is actually going to talk about, that we are trying to actually win this war on debt in the country. It's a general trend all the way from 2015 up to where we are 2019, 2020, both domestic and external. The trend is the same. Good. Then when you look at the principal repayments as well, which if you could actually just jump to that data right now, it's also going to show you that the same trend is exactly what we are seeing over the other side as well in terms of our principal repayments as well. Chacha, if indeed then we're going to talk about, we've been trying to manage it, should we see a disparity either between a principal and interest repayments?
Okay, thank you, Simba. Indeed, as we have already put it, the debt repayment that is in 2 levels, there's the repayment of the principal and there's the repayment of the interest.
Yes.
And as we have already said, The government here does not have a sinking fund, does not have even a consolidated all a reserve. So what it is trying to do is kind of a firefighting strategy of acquiring more loans to pay those that are already maturing. For example, the one that was taken in 2014, that is of 280 billion shillings, it was due last year. And as you have seen already, the Treasury CS has sought for Parliament approval to increase the debt ceiling from 9 trillion shillings to around 12 trillion shillings. When you look at that now, that approval or request to increase the debt ceiling,
Yes.
that tells you that the government is in deep problems, deep financial problems. So repaying the principal is also another big issue, because as I've said, they are adopting what we call a rollover debt refinancing strategy of going for an extra loan to pay the principal of the loan that is maturing, and yet there is also interest. And this one now, it is left to be paid by the taxpayers or from the internal sources of collecting revenue. So as you see here, the payment of principal and interest put together has made actually the country here enter into a bigger financial problems. And the strategy would be here, instead of just following what the international lending agencies are saying, we should also have our own made, customized strategy of generating more revenue, not necessarily by taxing the already overburdened taxpayers, but by looking for sources of generating more income. In fact, if we use some of this actual money we generate, even the debt quite well, to put more development actually projects in place, we will be able actually to cut down on unemployment. We'll be able to raise more. And as you also have heard, Kenya Power is increasing the tariff rates. What does that mean? The common man is still bearing the brand. Remember, the aim of even the government is to protect the vulnerable groups. The vulnerable groups are the people with a low income, people without meaningful jobs or businesses, people who find it difficult to put food on the table. But in protecting them, no. So we must be serious in terms of this debt management strategy. We shouldn't go for more, yet we don't utilize what we have and what we get in a prudent manner. It calls for implementation of structural reforms. It calls for a total paradigm shift in the way we do our things. This kind of impunity whereby money gets lost, we use it for unnecessary expenses, should stop. Thank you.
Gabriel, in 1 minute, if you may, this morning, actually 2 minutes, because that's all the time that we have, it's inevitable, therefore, that we are going to raise our debt ceiling. Gabriel, can you help us get that into context? IMF, their willingness to give us the last loan of 263 billion was based on us taking more physical reforms within the economy, which you're saying are no good for us. Top on that, factoring in a 3.4 trillion additional debt to a debt portfolio. Good. So what is it going to be, Gabriel? Is it the 9 trillion plus the 3.4, which the attorney said is going to sort of, I would say, gradually add to our debt, plus the ceiling, or it's going to be assumed, don't factor in the 3.4, just add 9 plus what would be assumed as a proper debt ceiling for us. And what is a proper debt ceiling for us right now, Gabriel?
So a proper debt ceiling for us is, I think the 9 trillion is reasonable, to be fair. But like you rightfully said, they cannot factor in the 3.4 trillion in that 9 trillion. They're going to say it's okay, our 9 trillion is going to be what we've actually borrowed. The 3.4, all these guarantees, etc., should be considered over and above that.
Yes.
Because, I mean, if you consider it, we're already over the ceiling. Now, it's where the government is, and I think the challenge for most economists is that we tend to exclude politics out of finance, yet they're one and the same thing. So really, it's a regime change that will save us. It's happened in DRC, it's happened in Angola, whereby a regime change actually brings a lot of sanity into the economics of that country, because based on where we are and the people in charge, they have no will to reverse the actions they have taken. They continue to take them. Even the things like raising charges by KPLC, you might as well make KPLC a fully owned government entity and then not make a profit, just break even, and that's it. And then stop penalizing people. It's as simple as that, because it's a private company owned partially by the government, but you're trying to, control and make the decisions for that company. So it's not really a public entity. So until they let go of the economy so that we can do proper trade and they stop making negative decisions, we are not going to get out of the hole we are in. We are not able to pay more taxes. You and I are not. Chacha is not. So then there is no choice other than a regime change that we just have to go to politics for this solution to come. Simple as that.
Gabriel almost asked you on now who among the ones who are almost going to take over could actually take us out of that, but I'd rather not. Gentlemen, thank you very much for coming to join us here on a Business AM. You have been quite invaluable for us this morning.
Yeah, thank you so much.
All right, and on that note, it's a good morning. Good morning.